In this lesson, we're going to be discussing how to troubleshoot user permission issues. One of the most important skills you'll need is the ability to troubleshoot the inevitable issues that will arise in your systems. You should always follow a general model for troubleshooting any type of operating system problem that you may come across, such as using the 7-step troubleshooting method you learned about back in your CompTIA A+ studies. Often, you're going to find that the reason something isn't working is because you're facing some sort of permission issue. When this occurs, you need to put your troubleshooting skills to work and diagnose and solve those issues related to permissions. Now, troubleshooting usually begins with the identification of a problem, and it doesn't end until the services have been restored and the problem no longer adversely affects our end users. Troubleshooting can take many forms, but all approaches have the same goal: to solve a problem efficiently with a minimal interruption to services. Now, there are a lot of different strategies for troubleshooting, and they can vary in their approach, but all of the troubleshooting models attempt to enable you to move in a methodical and repeatable pattern. The CompTIA troubleshooting model contains 7 steps. First, we have identifying the problem. This includes things like gathering additional information, duplicating the problem if you can, questioning users to gain experiential information, identifying the symptoms, determining if anything has changed, and approaching multiple problems as individual problems. Second, we're going to establish a theory of probable cause. This is where the troubleshooter questions the obvious. They consider multiple approaches, and they look for the root cause of the problem. Third, we want to test the theory to determine the cause. Fourth, we want to establish a plan of action to resolve the problem. We do this while identifying the potential effects of our plan. Fifth, we're going to implement the solution, meaning we're actually going to try what we think will solve the problem. Sixth, we'll verify full system functionality, verifying everything is working and we actually solve the problem. Seventh, we'll document our findings, our actions, and the outcomes. As a general guideline, whenever you're denied permissions when you expect to have those permissions, or vice versa, you get permissions when you're expecting to be denied, you should always verify the permissions of the relevant object by using the ls-al command. This will often save you a lot of guesswork, as many issues simply coming down to having the wrong permission being applied for a particular user, or a system administrator, or a piece of software, or a group. Just like with permissions, you should always use ls-al to verify the user and group ownership of a file or directory whenever you're experiencing ownership-related issues too. Despite having configured permissions and ownership correctly, some issues can still arise because users may not have been placed in the correct group. Use the groups command by typing groups username to be able to discover what groups a user is a member of. Another issue that can occur is when a user creates files and the default owning group is not what is expected. Make sure the expected group is the user's primary group, rather than a secondary group. In either case, use the user mod command to change the group membership when applicable. It may also be beneficial to list all the members of a group so you can identify which accounts to add or remove as needed. Now, to help with this process, there are 2 commands that are pre-installed on some distributions. This is known as lid and libuser-lid. These 2 commands can be used to retrieve all members of a group, including members whose primary group is the group being searched for. Another useful command is getEnt. The getEnt command, which is available on some distributions, will enable you to retrieve group members of non-standard authentication methods. So, remember, when troubleshooting permission issues, it's important to follow a few guidelines. First, follow an overall troubleshooting strategy for any kind of troubleshooting task. Always use a model that can produce repeatable results. Second, always start by verifying an object's permissions and ownership using the ls-al command. You're going to use this to ensure users have the permissions to work with a file if they're being denied access. Always ensure users do not have permissions that enable them to access files beyond what they should have, because we want to make sure we're implementing least privilege. Third, make sure you verify any special permissions that are needed are actually set properly. Ensure objects don't have a mutable flag set if you expect to modify those files. Make sure you set the set user ID permission on an executable if you need to run it with root permissions for it to function properly. Make sure you set the sticky bit if you only want the owner and the root user to be able to delete that object. These are the kind of things we're talking about with verifying special permissions. Fourth, ensure objects have the proper owner and owning group set. Set the set group ID permission on a directory whenever you want new files to take on that directory's group ownership. Use the groups command by typing groups username to verify the groups a user is a member of, modify group membership if necessary to ensure access or a lack thereof for specific users. If you're in doubt, you can always use tools like lid and get.ent to view members of a specific group. By keeping these troubleshooting guidelines in mind, you can quickly identify permission and ownership issues and get your users back up and running quickly.